Evening. Welcome. I first met my very special guest in the early 60s when he was part of a band trying to break into the big time. They called themselves the Beatles. Funny name, we thought. It'll never catch on. Well, the rest, as they say, is history. They changed the course of modern popular music. They composed the soundtrack to our lives. My special guest achieved the impossible. He not only survived being a Beatle, he surpassed it. In doing so, he established an unrivaled reputation as a singer-songwriter and became one of the great stars of the 20th century. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sir Paul McCartney. Still got it, the old Rocky, you see.
Start the show with a bang.
That's right.
Evening all. You said good evening.
So why rock and roll? I mean, why back to basics with that record?
Oh, I just love it, you know. It's one of those things. I always said I want to do a rock and roll album, and before the end of the 20th century, I thought I'd better get it done, you know.
So was that the best time of all, the old days of rock and roll like that, when songs like that were the currency?
Yeah, I think it started it all, you know. I mean, that particular song called Honey Hush, I first heard it by a guy called Johnny Burnett. And I was a teenager, and me and George had gone to stay... Me and George? Me and George had gone to stay at John's flat. Yeah, so I remember, I've got this image of John sort of getting out of bed in the morning and sort of leaning out, getting a ciggy on, putting this record on the dance set. And we'd been up all night, I think. Not much sleep. So they've got memories like that for me, you know, so I wanted to do them. I love it.
Those, I mean, we associate you now, of course, with rich and famous and successful and all that, but those early days, I mean, when I first came across you, it was a struggle, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we used to come to your show, come to Manchester, half an hour down the East Lancs, which is now some great big motorway, and we come and sort of go and do this show of yours, you know, people and places or scene at 6:30.
6:30, that's right, it was.
And we thought we were famous. Right.
You're not to know you conquer the world, never mind Salford.
Well, in Manchester, that was it, wasn't it?
That's right.
Edge of the world.
Was this record also, too, was it a way of kind of working your way through grief from, you know, the death of Linda?
I think so, a little bit, because she'd always said to me, she loved her rock and roll, she'd always said to me, you've got to do that rock and roll album. I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I think when she died, you know, I thought, you know what, I really have got to do that rock and roll album. So I left things for about a year, didn't really want to do anything, wanted to just sort of see how it was going to affect me, you know, rather than just jump into work and get busy and try and ignore it and deny it all. I thought, no, 30 years with such a beautiful woman, I've got to see how this is going to affect me. You know, I don't want to hide all my sort of feelings. So I took about a year doing that. And then when I was ready to work again, I thought, it's got to be that rock and roll album.
Right. And how did it affect you? I mean, what was it like? I mean, it's an awful question to ask anybody.
Yeah, it's... well, you know, I didn't expect to be sitting here being asked that. You know, I expected to be 80-year-old on the porch on our rocking chairs, you know. But it was very difficult, of course, you know. It was very sad because we fought against it. We did everything you could possibly do. So to the last minute, you know, we thought we might have cracked it. You know, there's always hope. So when she did die, it was just a terrible blow for me and the kids, basically, so, I mean, and all her family.
Nothing prepares you. I mean, you had the 2 years.
I don't think you can get prepared for that. No, it's just horribly sad. And I think, you know, as I say, I just decided that instead of just say, right, that's it, I'm British, oh, you know, get on with it, I thought, right, I'm going to sit here and cry, you know. So I did. Anyone who came round, who just cried, hello, I don't know you. But
that's not very British, is it? But it's very Irish, of course.
Very Irish.
Very Irish, isn't it?
Well, God bless the Irish.
But of course, I mean, in a sense as well, I mean, you've been through this terrible grief once with your mother too, hadn't you? So.
Yeah, that was one of the sort of frightening things, really, because as it was going along, there were little echoes that I remember from my childhood of it happening to my mum. One particularly is, I remember Mum getting tired, and us kids didn't really know. I remember my dad saying, well, go upstairs, love, and have 40 winks. So I made sure, when Linda got tired, I never said to her, go upstairs and have 40 winks. You know, you get a bit superstitious and all that stuff. Yeah, so it was not very nice at all, because she was such a beautiful woman, you know, a strong woman. She was a difficult woman to lose. And
also, too, of course, I mean, you had this remarkable relationship, didn't you? I mean, it would be remarkable, you know, in any case, but in the business you were in, it was extraordinary. It was unique in a sense.
We were very lucky.
I mean, you were kind of two sides of the same coin, weren't you, in that sense?
Yeah, she was, you know, my girlfriend, really. We kind of got married, you know, I got kind of knighted, she became Lady Linda, but we're still just boyfriend and girlfriend in a way. You know, we were very lucky. Gorgeous kids together, you know, so we spent a lot of time together. Yes. That was a great thing. We never really wanted to be apart. People would say, well, you know, why aren't you on your own tonight? We said, well, why? She's great, you know, I like her. I like sleeping with her, she's good. So it was just very natural, you know, it just fell in very naturally and very honest with each other. So we're very lucky. I mean, that's how I look at it now. I'm very, very lucky to have had 30 glorious years with her. You know, it makes it harder to lose her. But there are some people who have, you know, 70 years and don't really like each other. So, you know, that happens too.
You said she was a strong woman, and indeed she was. And of course, your mum was a strong woman too, wasn't she? I mean, tell me a bit about, she was a midwife, wasn't she? She was,
and a nurse originally and a midwife. I have this image of her going off in the snow one night from 72 Western Avenue in Speke in Liverpool, and cycling off on her bike in this deep snow with a little basket on the front and her nurse's uniform, a little, you know, suitcase on the back, going to deliver some baby, you know, The nurse must get through. Bring, bring. He's like, what? Goodbye.
Was she
so
the dominant,
very strong.
the dominant person in your early
I think
life?
she would have never admitted to that because women didn't in those days. You know, they let the fella be the dominant one. Yeah, sure. You know. But they controlled it very quietly, as you know. The northern women, particularly. Well, I don't know. In my case, you know.
But was she aspirational? Did she have ambitions?
Oh yeah, she was the one who got us upwardly mobile.
Really?
Yeah, because we always lived in the midwife's house. See, you know, we lived in 72 Western Avenue, and then she spotted a better midwife's house in the new bit down the road, so we moved there. And then she thought the area was a bit rough, you know, which it is pretty rough. And so she moved us to a posh bit where there was a. It wasn't a midwife's house this time, but it was actually virtually the same house. I mean, I've been back. I was just back a couple of weeks ago, and I went round it. I realised they're all the same house, just in different areas, you know.
What do people say when you go back there?
She moved the house.
Without telling you.
So she did it.
But I mean, because your house now there, one of the houses there, is National Trust property. It's got a plaque on the wall, isn't it?
I know.
So I mean, you go back there, you show the kids.
I haven't been in since, actually, you know, because I'm terrified to go in. Because, you know, I used to live there, and it's now a National Trust thing. I thought of just jumping over the fence and, you know, breaking in.
You take the kids there and show them where...
Well, what I used to do before it was made a National Trust place, I would always, whenever we got up there, because I love Liverpool, I love, you know, every street's got a little memory. I'd go past, drive the kids when they were a bit younger, and I'd say, oh, there's where we did our first gig, oh, there's where I used to walk down here with John, and oh, John will live up there, and there's the park where we went, you know, here's the golf club, we tried to get the caddy's job, and whatever, you know, all that stuff. And we eventually pulled up at 24th Road, which is the National Trust one. And we're just sitting in the car outside. And it was just an ordinary house then. And I'm saying to the kids, oh, there's my bedroom. And my dad planted that lavender hedge there and doing all the stories. And some old fella comes past. And he just looked at us. He says, yeah, he did used to live there.
That's lovely. What about going back to those days, those early days with the aspirational mum and you, this bright child, this grammar school boy in Liverpool? I mean, what were your ambitions in those days? I mean, what did you want to be? Do you want to be rich and famous?
Well, my mum wanted her boys, me and Mike, my brother, to be doctors because she was a nurse. Apparently, all nurses want their kids to be doctors. But we couldn't do that, I'm afraid. You've got to be clever. And very, you know, apply yourself. My report was always, he could do well if he'd apply himself. And
your report was?
Yeah. I used to actually tell my kids, I'd try to, now, come on, kids, you've got to apply yourself. Come on, you know. I did well at school and all that. And they eventually found one of my old reports, and it was terrible. It was like, you know, he's the biggest disappointment in the class. They're going, gotcha. And I said, well, it was 1 year.
So what was the motivation then? Because you're an ambitious man. I mean, you had ambitions. Yeah.
I would have been anything that made a lot of money. Like anyone in those days. You know, a dentist was the big career. They make a lot of money. Accountants and stuff. But I couldn't do any of that. I wasn't, I wouldn't apply myself. But, so I got enough to become a teacher, which I nearly was an English teacher. I managed to scrabble together 5 GCEs over a period of 10 years.
Mature student.
Yeah. But the Beatles came up before that, you know.
Well, I mean, you met George first of all, didn't you? And then,
George went to the same school,
and then there's this historical meeting almost now in the sense of the history of music with John. Tell me about that meeting. That first encounter.
We had a friend in common who went to school with us. Went to school with me and George. He was called Ivan Vaughan. And he used to be in one of the little skiffle groups that John was in. He used to jive with Ive, the ace on the bass. And he used to have one of those tea chest basses, you know, he's a bit of string on a broom handle, on a tea chest. And so he said, you should come along to this thing, you know, this group's playing and my mate John's in it, you know, Woolton Village Fete. He said, you should come along. So I did. Me and Ivan were born on exactly the same day, so we were good mates. They went along and just saw this group on a little stage there. And the singer, who was John, just looked like he had something, you know.
Did you audition?
Well, what happened was they did their first thing and then they had a break and then they were due to do the evening thing. So the break was an opportunity for the band to get drunk, really. And so John was, he'd had a few beers when I sort of finally said hello to him. But yeah, I'll show you the song.
Yeah.
Sure. I just happen to have a guitar.
As you do.
As you do, you carry them with you, you know.
That's right.
My trade. Near enough. And so, yeah.
It'll do.
It'll do.
Yeah.
So we were backstage saying John was leaning over me with this beery breath. So I thought, who is this, you know? But one of them lent me his guitar and I had to turn it around because I'm left-handed. Theirs goes the other way and they wouldn't let me change the strings. But because I had a mate who had a right-handed, I'd learned to play upside down. So that was a little bit impressive. But I also knew the words to this song that they all loved and they didn't know the words. That was enough to get me in. It was called 20 Flight Rock, Eddie Cochran's song. Hey. So I'll just do a little bit of it, show you what got me in the Beatles. Well, I got a girl with a record machine. When it comes to rockin', she's a queen. But you dance on a Saturday night, all alone where I can hold her tight. She lives on the 20th floor uptown. The elevator's broken down, but I want her to fly 3 by 4, 5, 6, 7, fly 8, fly more. I'm on 12, I'm starting to sag. 15 before I'm ready to drag. I get to the top, I'm too tired to rock. Oh, yeah.
And that was the start of it all. And what was the one single image, one single moment that when you look back sums up for you Beatlemania? What happened to you? Is it just...
Beatlemania? Single image, I suppose, would have to be arriving in America for the first time. Because we kind of crept our way up, you know, through clubs and dance halls, the Cavern, theatres and things like that. Did a bit of telly, where we saw you, radio and stuff. And then eventually the thing came to go to America. And we weren't sure how big we were there. So we got off the plane and there was all these millions of people. We said, who's this for? They said, it's for you. And, you know, we rode in the big limousine and all the DJs going, and the Beatles are arriving in New York, it's official, they've landed, and no, WKBC, you know. It's like, what? So we were just thrilled, you know, so...
And that would, I mean, that was... So, but that would totally have changed your lives, wouldn't it? From that moment on, you became somebody different. You're this band from Liverpool, and all of a sudden, overnight, you're bigger than any band has ever been before.
Yeah, good, isn't it?
It's an extraordinary story. They're just 4 lads, you know, just happened to America and wallop, it goes to the...
I think the thing is, you know, to tell you the truth, I think we always knew we were a little bit special.
Did you?
Because we'd work with other bands and we'd love them. We think they were good. We were kind of slightly more studenty than the average bands around at the time. So we had a little sort of an edge, a little bit more artsy. John had gone to art college. Me and George had gone to this grammar school and just, I don't know, I kind of like poetry and plays a little. I think somehow it kind of gave us a little bit of a sort of edge somehow,
and
a little bit different.
Too, didn't you? I mean, you liked each other. There was a kind of
we did like each other a lot. You had to.
Yeah.
You had to, or you couldn't get on. I mean, there was one time when we were... This is how much we had to like each other. We'd travel around all the time, and we'd be in the van, the you know, ever-present van. And remember, we'd come up from London. We'd never stay in London. We'd always go back for the night, go home, you know. So we're coming back, and somehow, I think, like, the heater had gone off in the van, and maybe the windscreen had come in. And it was a bitterly cold winter's night. So we hit upon this plan of lying on top of each other. It was the only way you really couldn't... You had to do that, didn't you? Yeah, so we lay on top of it. It was a Beatles sandwich, and... Isn't that a nice thought? And the person on the bottom was the least favourite position. Got a bit heavy, so you had to keep swapping. You know, I'm on top now.
If that was remarkable, the four of you hitting it off and creating this extraordinary scenario, what was even more remarkable, perhaps, was that within it there was Lennon and McCartney, who became, you know, these extraordinary songwriters. And when you think back about that, I mean, that was I mean, just how did that happen ever? The two of you got together from... And there were these two people around at that same time that got together and wrote these wonderful songs.
I mean, I don't know about how we got together, really. It was just... I'd seen John around. I'd seen him on the bus. He was a bit of a Ted. We used to call him Teds, then Teddy Boys. He had, you know, a long draped jacket and he had sideboards. So he was a bit, ooh, he was the kind of guy you'd look at, he's cool, on the bus, you know. And eventually got to meet him through Ivan, as I've said. And he liked songs, I liked songs. And the real reason was that any shows we did, if there were other bands on the bill, sometimes they'd do our whole act before we went on. You'd be sitting in the dressing room, you'd hear, "Long Tall Sally, what'd I say? My God," and they'd be doing all
They're doing cover versions.
So we all did the same stuff, basically. It was out of the charts, you know.
Right.
So we hit upon this idea that we'd either would look for obscure B-sides of records that they wouldn't know, or finally, the real great light bulb went off, we'll write our own. So I think actually that's really the only reason we started writing, just to foil these other sods.
And where did the inspiration come from? I mean, how did the two of you used to write? I mean, what was it like? Was it a formal thing? Let's write a song now, John, or what?
Yeah, it'd be like that. We'd go home to, normally to my house, because his Auntie Mimi wouldn't have us at hers. My dad was at work, see, so we could sneak off school and go there. And we'd just go, and it was literally just, let's try and write a song. And we wrote a few quite bad ones at first. But then we started to get a little bit better, and the inspiration just came. It always comes from all sorts of different places, you know.
Like what? Can you sort of demonstrate?
Inspiration coming from somewhere. Yes. Come on, love. Yeah, I tell you, once I remember when Linda and I had just had our first baby, which was Mary, and we already had Heather, but our first baby together was Mary. And Mary was born, and I was at the hospital basically the whole week, you know, just while Linda recovered and took it easy, and we like the chips in this place too. So we were sitting around all week and just enjoying just having had this lovely baby. And there was this Picasso print on the wall of an old man playing a guitar. And I looked at it all week, and towards the end of the week I thought, what chord's he playing? You know, I'm a guitar player, what is he playing? I noticed he just had two fingers here. You get that chord there, guys? Just two fingers there. And so I thought, well, I'll try and see, you know, what the chord is, and if it sounds any good. So, ooh, that's nice, you know. So then I used that as the inspiration, and tried to write a song that only had used two fingers. Right. So I'll play you a bit of that.
Please.
Note carefully, two fingers all the time. My hand never leaves my wrist. It goes, that's how it goes anyway.
Well, when you talk about you writing songs, of course, I mean, when you were 22 years of age, when you wrote a song that became the most popular song ever made, I think, ever written. And I think yesterday there's been played for 7 million times on American radio, which, if you're really keen to know how long it would take to listen to that, it's 25 years. And
we haven't got time to
We haven't got time for that. But, I mean, we know again, talking about inspiration, I mean, it's now legendary, you know, that you dreamed that phrase up in your mind, and then you sat down and called it Scrambled Eggs or something, was the original title of it. But, I mean, since that time, you performed it many, many times, it's become the song you're most associated with. Have you really thought where the song...
But I don't really know, you know, it's just nice to have written it. And it's kind of, it's magic, it's one of those magic things. I believe in those magic moments, you know, they sometimes just happen to you. I don't talk about it too much in case the magic doesn't happen again, you know.
Let's hear this lovely song.
You want to hear this?
Do you ever get tired of doing it?
Yes. No, I actually don't do it that much. It's only when I go on tour I do it, or when you ask me to. So for the 7 millionth and one. Came suddenly, why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say. I said something wrong, now I long for yesterday. Yesterday, love was such an easy game to play. Thank you. I'm always tempted. Thank you. Thank you. I'm always tempted in that second verse there, you know, I believe in yesterday. Suddenly. But I resisted that temptation tonight.
Yes, you did it on
party show.
You did it on rehearsal. I thought, I hope to God he doesn't do that. That's wonderful. That's beautiful. I mean, that is. There might be all these versions, but that's the version. That's the only one. Tell me about this. It's still amazing that all these years after John's death, that there's still this debate about the two of you about the history being rewritten, revisionist history, and John's this and you're that. First of all, for people who didn't meet him, what was he like? Describe him to us. Tell me.
John, he was beautiful, very beautiful. He was a very complex guy because he had a lot of tragedy in his life. You know, his dad left home when he was 3, and he didn't see him till he got famous. He went to live with his auntie and uncle. The uncle died. I remember John telling me he started to think he was a jinx on the male side, you know. And then his mum, John's mum, lived with another guy who we used to go and visit because he doted on his mum. But then she got run over by an off-duty policeman, I think, one night and got killed in front of Aunt Mimi's house. And then his first marriage, you know, ended in divorce. So he had a lot of tough breaks, really, John. So I think he was very guarded. And I think the wit and everything was always like, you know, the shell that came down. But having said that, you know, that was one side of him. He was a very lovable guy, very warm-hearted and great friend, you know.
I mean, how upsetting was it when the split occurred, when you and John, not just the Beatles, but you and John had this rift, where some very cruel things were said, particularly about yourself, by John?
Well, we kind of had a war in the newspapers, you know. It was like, well, I think you're that, well, I think you're that, you know. And there was a lot of that went on. And it was very upsetting, yeah, it was terrible. But what could you do, you know? I could just sort of say, well, I think you're a load of bloody this and that. And so all we could do, really, was have the war in public. The nice thing about it, that was really upsetting, I think, for both of us. I think he had to clear the decks in order to give Yoko space. So this was now his new relationship. And being a good, loving guy, he had to kind of get rid of the old mates, you know, in order to give her what he thought a woman needed, you know, him. But the great thing about it was that after all that warring, before he died, we did make it up. So,
what was the point where you did? I mean, what was the first approach? Was it by accident or?
There were all sorts of approaches. I would come to New York and sort of say, you know, let's get together. Yeah, what do you want? What do you want? Well, I don't want it. I just want, yeah, oh, sure, pull the other one. But, you know, there was a lot of that. But eventually, I think it was when he had Sean, when he had his baby. He obviously mellowed a lot. And I remember I then was able to ring him up and sort of say, what are you doing? And he'd say, oh, I'm baking some bread, actually. I said, baking bread? I've just baked a loaf here. We've had a bread strike, and, you know, And so we could talk about babies and baking bread and cats. He was a great cat lover and stuff. So we had some really good conversations. And thankfully for me, you know, we were really good friends by the time he died. I'd hate to have left it on that other note. It would have been just ultimate tragedy for me.
You're very, very close, but of course you're also always very different, weren't you, about how you differed in your regards to children, for instance?
Yeah, I was very lucky, you know. My Liverpool family was very sort of close and lots of kids. I mean, they breed like rabbits up there, you know. It must be awful for them. No, so I had a lot of experience with kids. I was always being handed off, here, you hold the baby, you've got to learn to jiggle it and do stuff, you know. And John never had any of that experience. So when he had his first boy, Julian, I think, and the Beatles was going on, he didn't have much time for him. So I think it was a bit sad that John didn't really have enough time. And one of the very poignant moments for me was, I knew how to play with kids just from having seen so many and relatives' kids and stuff. And we were on holiday somewhere, and I was playing with Julian, and we were on a little boat, actually. So I was doing that one you do with kids. Okay, now, I'm the pirate captain, and you're my mate. Okay, let's go over here. Yeah. Okay, now, I'm gonna, watch out, Indians, you know. Julian's going, yeah. So we're playing this, and we got on great, and then John came up to me afterwards, and he just said, how'd you do that? And it was like so poignant, and it was like, you know, I can't tell you in a couple of words.
Do you think had he not been killed as he was, you would have been together again, that you would have written again, that you would have been a partnership again?
I don't know. It would be. It's nice to think we would.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thought on what might have been there. When all this happened and the Beatles were no more, and you were kind of segregated in a sense from the others, it seemed to be them against you. It was over money and. And in the end, you proved to be right in a sense, weren't you? Because you were right about Alan Klein, what it was all about. And I think John, in fact, admitted that toward the end. But in that time, when it was them against you in that sense, I mean, it must have been a very depressing point in your life.
Yeah, it really was. It was one of the worst points, really. Because, you know, we'd been mates, we'd come up together, it'd been very beautiful, we'd done all these great things. And suddenly, here we were, really bitching at each other. And, you know, like... We'd never bitched at anyone like that in our lives. You know, you'd had arguments in your family maybe, but never anything like that. And yeah, I was very depressed. It really went for me, actually. I kind of, you know, I'd find myself in the morning not wanting to get up. Because I really felt, I think, what it's like to be redundant. There was a lot of it happening, you know, people losing jobs and people were going down on it. And I always used to think, well, you know, it's only losing a job, you get another job. But I experienced it, I think, firsthand, you know, because this was a big job I'd lost and couldn't think of the next one I was going to take. So, yeah, I didn't want to get up in the morning. When I did get up, I went straight to the whiskey. Hey, whoa, lovely. By about, you know, 3 o'clock, I was out of it. We'll go back to bed again. So, you know, and that's not very me, all that. But luckily, Linda was there, and she said, excuse me, you know, I don't think you want to do that, do you? So she kept me straight eventually, but I had a few months of going off, you know.
I mean, what's even more remarkable, too, is that you came out... I mean, it's difficult reinventing yourself after the Beatles, matching it. But in a sense, you surpassed it, didn't you? I mean, your Wings was huge. Then your entire career as a solo songwriter and performer.
I just stuck at it long enough, you know. No, you know, that was the big difficulty. How do you follow the Beatles? Yeah. Nobody else could do it.
No.
We used to say, follow that, you know. And now it was me having to try and follow it. It was very difficult, but I just made a decision. Either I'd do that or I'd give up music. And it was too much to think I would give up music, so I just crashed on. We just put a little band together, went and did little gigs around the universities, 50p on the door. You know, just anything to get back playing, and gradually built it up into a pretty good band, Wings. By 1976, we were really shit-hot little band.
You know that. I mean, the other problem you had around that time too, of course, was this perception of Linda as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That this was happening all the time.
Yeah.
Here was this girl, to start with, dared to marry you. Then she was a vegetarian, and then all this, she played in the band and all that. And that must have been a troublesome time as well.
Yeah, it was very difficult, you know, but I say we knew we had to crash through. And after the Beatles, it was always going to be difficult. People would say, oh, she's never had a lesson in her life. We said, well, the Beatles never had when we started, you know. That's where we went back to square one. They'd say things like, oh, she can't play. She's playing with one finger. Well, if you look at the film, it's actually an instrument. It's called a mini-moog. You can only play it with one finger.
Yes.
It's not polyphonic.
Yes.
So
you could have been a doctor.
I could have. It turns out I could have been a doctor. But no. So she got made fun of. But she's, I say, very strong. She just said, no, I'm going to do it. By the time we were on tour in America in '76, she was doing a lot of very complicated keyboard work, like in songs like Live and Let Die. Very hard, and it was her doing it. There was no one faking it. So she did great, really, you know.
The other thing, too, is that you mentioned there that, you know, you felt like jacking in the game, giving up music. But, I mean, you'd find that impossible to do. I mean, music pours out of you. I mean...
Well, I do love it, yeah. Sure. I really do. I think, you know, if they fired me, I'd still do it as a hobby.
All right, well, there's a grand piano there. And in fact, it's there because it's my show, as you said. Kindly gave it to me, back to me, yes. And I've got a request.
Right.
I want you to do Long and Winding Road.
We don't do requests, Mike.
Oh, I see.
For you?
For me.
Can I touch your knee?
Please do. Okay, right.
The long and winding road that leads to your door will never disappear. I've seen that road before. It always leads me here. Lead me to your door. The wild and windy night that the rain washed away has left a pool of tears, crying for the day. Why leave me standing here? Let me know the way. Many times I've been alone, and many times I cried. Anyway, you never know the many ways I tried, but still they lead me back to the long and winding road. You left me standing here a long, long time ago. Don't leave me waiting here. Lead me to your door. But still they lead me back to the long and winding road. You left me standing here a long, long time ago.
to your door. Ooh, ooh, yeah.
Thank you.
Very much. Very much. That's it. And that's a lovely song. I mean, that's a case in point. Where did that come from? I mean, how did that start?
Long Winding Road. I was sitting at my piano.
Oh, the other day?
The other day. Yeah, just sometimes, you know, sitting at the piano is enough. Just doodling around, something comes, you know, if you're lucky.
What about places, locations? Do they inspire you, things like that?
Yeah, they can. What happened recently, I got a song that happened recently when I went to New York to do some work there, and I was staying, they put me in the Carlisle Hotel, which is a very posh, old-fashioned hotel, and I went up in the lift to the 31st floor, and I went to look at the room they'd given me there, and it overlooked New York, it overlooked Central Park, it's a big plate glass window, this beautiful swish apartment there. And to the right of the plate glass window, there was a little baby grand piano. So it was like, well, you know, what's a guy to do in New York with that setup? If you're a songwriter, the only thing to do is like write a song, you know. So the next day I had some time, and so I sat down at this grand and was looking out the window. And this song I'll play you now, I'm only just kind of finishing it up. This one came to me in about an hour or so in the words and the music. Now see if you can remember it.
How can I hope to reach your love? Help me to discover what it is you're thinking of. 'Cause when we kiss, nothing feels the same. I could spend eternity inside your loving flame. What am I to do if I don't have you? I'll be feeling blue, sitting here without you. You could be the one to chase my blues away. If I don't have you, I'll be feeling blue, just sitting here without you. You could be the one to chase my blues away, away. So how can I hope to reach your love? Help me to discover what it is you're thinking of. 'Cause when we kiss, nothing feels the same. I could spend eternity inside your loving flame. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
So that's the That's the world premiere.
That's the world premiere, yeah.
You say it's
Just about remembered it.
Yeah, and an hour that, or it took you words and
Yeah, you know, sometimes they just come really quickly, you know, and I think just the setup there in the hotel and everything was so
inspirational.
And actually, the next day I was still in the same place, and that evening I'd been to see a mate of mine who's a kind of cabaret pianist, Richard Rodney Bennett, amongst other things, and he was playing at this place, the Algonquin Hotel in the Oak Room, which is very New York, you know, and doing a real sort of New York thing, cabaret thing. So the next day, I was again looking out the plate glass window here, over Central Park, as you do. And there was like a little mist on the park. So inspired by his thing the evening before, I thought, I've got to write like a real New York kind of song. So you got to imagine this as a kind of ooby-dooby song. So it goes like this. I remember this one.
The mist that settled on Central Park is clearing up and things are looking brighter now. So let's go walking before it's dark. The mayor of New York City says he might allow the whole of old Manhattan to belong to us. It's going for a song to us. The Frick Museum is shutting down, but let's duck in and wander around a pick or two. Take a taxi and head downtown, where every street magician does a trick for you. And all the young aspiring bards will throng to us. They dedicate a song to us.
Non-finished masterpiece, eh? That's very sort of Bobby Darin and Big Damone, isn't it? That, and not to of course. It reminds me that you once wrote a song for Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. Well, that was a disaster.
Was it?
Yeah, it was, because, you know, when we started off, that was because we weren't necessarily, we weren't like into totally rock and roll. There was a little bit of sort of jazz and cabaret. It was on the kind of crossover point. So I think, you know, one of our big ambitions, most songwriters, was to write a song for Sinatra. Yeah. So I wrote one, and at that age, and then years and years later, sent it to him. And it wasn't a very good little song, I must say. But I thought he might like it. But he thought I was having a go.
Why?
He was like, is this guy for real? It was like, oh, I don't know how it goes. It was a, it goes something like, if when she tries to run away and he calls her back, she comes. If there's a next time, he's okay, 'cause she's under both his thumbs. She'll limp along to his side, singing a song of ruin night. Betty says nothing doing. I call it suicide. As soon as he kidding me. He turned it down.
I don't know why.
So I've been turned down by Frank Sinatra.
That could have a profound effect on his career, that one song. What, I mean, have you ever felt like bothering to learn how to play an instrument or read music or write music?
Are you having a go now?
I was wondering, you know.
Learning to play an instrument. I mean, I'm on your show, Mike. The boys.
You know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean, yeah. No.
No.
I've tried a few times. I tried when I was a little kid and didn't get on with it. too much homework. They used to keep, you know, go and learn how many crotchets in a minute.
Yes.
3? You know, I could never work it out. I had too much homework anyway with school.
But you've always had this feeling, haven't you, about the accessibility of music. A lot of people might be put off by the thought of, you know, having to go through the formalities of learning. And I mean, also too, you've had this attitude that all music is music. I mean, there's not classical or popular music or whatever. It's just good or bad music.
Yeah, I don't really see any barriers. You know, people impose barriers, but I think, you know, I just don't see them. I like music. It can be any kind. I like the sort of cabaret stuff, the rock and roll stuff, classical stuff.
Yeah.
As long as it's good music, I can be attracted to it.
Right, well, let's see a bit of classical. It's working classical. There's a video we've got here. And this piece we're about to hear has got a particular kind of poignancy, hasn't it?
Well, it's a song I wrote for Linda called My Love. And when she died, we had 2 memorial services, one in London and one in America, one in New York. And on talking to the kids and thinking what kind of music, if she could choose, she'd like, we thought she was such a great supporter of mine, we thought she'd probably like to hear my songs. So we asked a string quartet to do them in New York, and this version is the one that these are the people from that service. They did it so well, you know.
Let's have a look and a listen. Recorded there back in your own backyard in Liverpool.
Liverpool, yeah.
That's right. Do you find yourself, as you get older, more and more attracted to the place, to the notion of going back there, to looking at it?
I don't know about more attracted. I always love it. You know, it's a place I love. I love the people. Everyone says that about Liverpool, you know. The people are head cases. A lot of them. They've got a strange brilliance, I think. You know, I love them. But they're such lovely people, you know. And amazing people I've met. I've met prime ministers and, you know, highfalutin people around the world. But I've never met people as good as these people, or as wise, or as funny. I had an Uncle Harry, who's Auntie Gin's husband, Uncle Harry, and Harry Harris, his name was. And he was a builder. And he was real thick Liverpool, all right, said, you know, a real thick accent, like, you know. And he was a bit of a boozer, he wouldn't mind me saying. He was proud of it. But once my cousin Betty had decorated her flat. She was newly married, and she and her husband, Mike, had decorated the flat a kind of nice pale mushroom colour. And Harry came round, and he was having a little drink and stuff, and she happened to say, what do you think of the colour, the mushroom colour? Do you like it, Harry? Because his opinion was valuable, you know. He said, yeah. He looked at it, he said, he said, it's all right, Fan. He said, it looks like boiled shite. I mean, you know, shite's bad enough, but this image of him with a little pan of water, that's the colour.
I mean, the perception people have of you, of course, before they meet you, and is of this kind of godlike, this icon figure. You know, there's this huge. Well, you see, you go like that, and but it's true. You know, but when I read about you, you have this other perception of yourself, don't you? That person up there performing is somebody different.
Yeah, you know, I think it's if you believe that you are this great godlike figure, I think it goes for your head, you know. And we're talking about Liverpool people. I mean, they don't allow that in people. You know, they knock it down. You know, they see you doing that. All right, so there, you know. And I was up in Liverpool once, and just a guy in the street, you know. I was driving around, and I saw this guy notice me. And you get a sense. You must know this. You get a sense. Oop, they've clocked me. So I'm just driving there, and this guy's looking at me, smiling, and he looks at me, and goes, There's not a lot you can do. You know, just drive home.
But I mean, it must take some doing in the sense that, you know, the life that you've led and all those sort of outside influences that have been on you and everybody knowing who you are and whatever. It must be difficult for you and your family. I mean, it must take a huge effort, a huge will to actually achieve any degree of normalcy.
Yeah, well, yeah, I say the Liverpool connection's great for that. And then when Lynn and I got together, she liked normal life. She was from quite a rich American family. She never used to think she was rich. She said, no, I wasn't rich. I said, but who used to do the cooking in the house then? She said, well, my mum sometimes. She said, and then the cook, or, you know, the maid. I said, well, you're kidding? Nobody has cooks and maids where you're from. That's rich, you know. And so she used to like to hang out there with whoever was cooking. That's when she became such a good cook. But so she wanted to keep very much our feet on the ground, and for the kids and for us both. So, you know, we did that. We put them through state schools instead of Eton and all the posh schools. Sure. Even our friends say, oh, Paul, you've got to give him the best chance in life. Your son's got to go to Eton, of course. Get his name down. So, I could imagine him coming home. Hello, Papa. All right, James, how you doing, sir? Very well, thank you, Papa. He couldn't, you know. So, I mean, you know, nothing against Eton. Very nice people, I'm sure.
So what about the future then? You've got this new record out, Run Devil Run.
Yeah.
We're going to hear another track in just a moment. All Shook Up we're going to hear, eh?
Rock and roll.
So, and you're going to take it on the road, aren't you, the band?
Well, we are actually going to do a gig before the end of the year at the Cavern in Liverpool.
The Cavern. I mean, it only takes about 150 people.
300? Takes 300. You get you all in.
It'd be a fabulous close to millennium.
It'd be rocking out the century,
absolutely.
I reckon. Yeah.
Well, Paul, thanks a lot. I much enjoyed talking. I waited a long time.
It was lovely, yeah.
That was good. You enjoyed it?
Good man, yeah.
Excellent. All
Great.
right. Paul McCartney, thank
Cheers,
you.
thank you. Thank you.